Okay. Oh, we are live. Oh, couldn't see that. Hello, hey everybody. Hi. Thanks to everybody who's taken out time to join us. Today is a very special day for everybody here at Mailmodo. In the house today we have Mark Robbins, and I am your host Bhavya for the day. Um, I'm sure there are a lot of folks in this group who already know Mark. We could see a lot of signups from the Email Geeks Club, and of course you know who Mark is, and then there are a lot of folks who don't know who Mark is. So of course we'll be chatting about a lot of things around AMP and um, what is possible in this new exciting world of emails. But before that, a little note of thanks from Mark's here. I was just checking and stalking Mark's Twitter, and what I saw was that the first 50 folks he follows are all in the realm of email marketing. Mark, you are an email junkie, right?
Yeah, very much so. I set up my Twitter accounts, I think the day after coming back from the first email design conference that Litmus run, which is now called Litmus Live, would have been like 2012, 2013, something like that. And then I got chatting to people and it's like, why aren't you on Twitter? It's all going on Twitter. So I joined up on there and been email geek since then.
Yeah. And Mark, you, of course, there's a whole lot that we need to talk about AMP and interactive emails and whatnot. But you started a journey with Rebel emails, right? And I guess you guys were the front runners in the whole interactive HTML side of the equation that we so regularly see now. Can you just talk to us a little bit about that journey of yours, Rebel email, how it all started? How did you get into this sphere?
Yeah, so I started in email in 2012. About 10 years ago, coming up in August, I think, be 10 years in email. I started playing around with email, and one of the things that got me was people saying, "Oh, you can't do this. You can't use background images in email. You can't use bullet lists in email." And I was like, okay. And first stop, I was just started, and I was like, okay, I accept that. And then after a while, I was like, yeah, but it works. I can see it works. And then I started thinking, it was like, okay, so it works, but there's a few caveats. So you have to do it this way. And from there, I started to think, what else can you do? And I found this article on Campaign Monitor about progressive disclosure, which came out in 2011, I think. And that's the first thing I saw of interactive email. So I started playing around with some stuff there and put a couple of things together. And from there, I got chatting to this startup based over in the States called Rebel Mail. And we got chatting over Twitter, and they offered me a job and I started working there. And so that was really good. And then at Rebel Mail, we were trying to make email interactive. Well, we were making email interactive. We were building all kinds of things within email. So image galleries, hotspots, filters, quizzes, forms, review forms, all kinds of things. And we were sort of really pushing it and building making it easier for people to use these components that we're creating and put them into their email. And that was it's going really well. And the company was building up, and we were getting a lot more clients and sending huge numbers of emails. And then we got acquired by Salesforce in the end of 2018. Which was good. And I've been working at Salesforce ever since then, and sort of bringing interactive email into Salesforce. And we were sending a lot of emails at Rebel. At Salesforce, we're sending a lot more emails. The numbers are pretty huge. But yeah, it's going well.
Yeah. And for the uninitiated, Mark, of course, there's a huge segment here who understands what interactive emails are. And then there are people who are listening or hearing about this concept for the first time. Probably explain it like I'm a 5 kind of a primer on what interactive emails are all about.
Yeah. So interactive email, it's the way I describe it is it's an action taken in the email that triggers a result without leaving that email. So traditionally with emails, you click a link, you go to a website, you do something. With interactive email, you click a link and it does something without you having to leave the website. So that could be something, and mostly that would be something that's happening inside the email itself. So you can have like a photo gallery as one of the common use cases in, and you have an image, and below it you might have like 4 little thumbnail images. You click on those thumbnails and it changes to the large image. It's a design pattern we see on every website. Yeah, all the e-commerce websites have this on it. It's very common design pattern, and it just means that you can see a lot more of a product. You can see multiple photos of a product rather than just one. It gives you a better idea of it, and it's things like that. And there's so many more things. It's just the way you click on something and something happens. So in Accordion, you can have a title, you click on it and it expands out and you see some content. And this is, there's the 2 ways of doing this, is with interactive HTML email, which is where I started off, and interactive AMP email, which is something that is, much more recent, but working on both sides of it, and it's very interesting space.
Yeah, indeed it is. And now that you're at Salesforce, Mark, what's the Big Daddy's view on all things AMP and interactive? How are you approaching it now that you are into a larger conglomerate and there's so many users across industries, across geographies? How are you guys looking at it right now?
So Salesforce. So AMP launched officially in 2019. Is when it fully launched, and then so 2020 Salesforce, we launched the interactive content from Rebel, and then 2021, so about this time last year, we launched support for AMP, and so now anybody who uses Salesforce Marketing Cloud, you can create an email and you can select to generate a template or from AMP and HTML and plain text. So you're creating the 3 MIME types, and you can create a template there and then send it out from there. Currently, it's we just have a code window, so you copy and paste your code into that window, and then you can preview it when you click through on the preview screen, and then you send it out. But that's what we've got currently within Salesforce.
Sure. And what's your role in this larger entity now? I mean, once you got acquired, what's your gameplay there?
So I'm working on the interactive content team, which sort of sits inside of Marketing Cloud, but we do sort of interact with other clouds as well, and within that, Salesforce, we did the interactive content. So the main product that we had at Rebel is now available within Salesforce. Within Content Builder, we have the form block, as they call it. So in Content Builder, if you're not aware, it's a drag and drop editor, and you can just drag in this form block and it puts it into your email, and then you can create a form from there, and your users can then fill out that form and submit it from directly within the email. And so this is it's a great use case, being able to do that in the email. It makes life a lot easier for the users rather than clicking through and doing it on the web. We do have that as the fallback because this doesn't work everywhere, and so that's all with interactive HTML. So I'm still primarily on the HTML side of interactivity, but there's I work on AMP more with the working group, the AMP working group, which are the people behind AMP, really, rather than on the Salesforce side.
Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating. I mean, so for the viewers here, Mark and I have also met for a dry run, and we started talking about this AMP working group. And Mark, you and I both know that there are a lot of things floating around in their general psyche about, okay, this is a Google technology. What's the deal here? How privacy centric is this? How secure is this? Can you just talk about how AMP working body works and functions independently? Because you were telling me a lot of these things yesterday.
Yeah. So there's a group of people, small group of people that represent representatives from AMP, from Gmail, from Yahoo/AOL, from mail.ru, and myself there, and I'm sort of there as the voice of Salesforce and voice of email developers as a whole, and sort of what developers want and how to talk from that point of view. And as the spec develops, it comes to the group and we review things. The email clients will look and they will focus mostly on the security side of things and making sure things are secure. And if there's a new proposal, how about we support this? Then they will look at it, they'll take it to their security teams who will then assess it and see what potential risks there are. And then we'll get feedback there and see whether we want to progress with that or not. I'll say sort of if this is something that email developers will use and how people might use these things, and also look at sort of limitations of it. And and then it goes sort of through, but it all sort of goes through the AMP team. So AMP was set up by Google, but it's not actually part of Google anymore. It's set as a it's this independent body, but there's still close ties with Google. But these decisions are made as through the working group, and also there is the larger AMP working group which sort of oversees us. So we can't push it too much. We need to have some connection with them too. We're independent of Google, not independent of AMP. So AMP sits above AMP for email.
Yeah, that's great. And then, of course, this is pretty new, the world. And of course, even at MailModo, we've been into the business for about 1.5 years. So still new. We're still educating a lot of the audiences out there around what are the possibilities of AMP and associated interactivity. What are the most frequently asked questions you get, Mark, when somebody is trying to switch to AMP? When they're planning the strategy, what's the education that you guys are doing there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, the main questions quite often come up about like fallbacks and how do you build AMP and where is it supported and how do you manage fallbacks? And that's something that comes up a lot. So it's a separate MIME type. So traditionally, what most people will be sending is an HTML email, and alongside that, you should always send a plain text version of that email. So all we're doing now is adding a third MIME type, which is going to be the AMP version. So now we're sending 3 versions of that email. And depending on how what that email client then supports, it will show that to the user. So if the user has selected they only want to see plain text, they'll see the plain text. If it supports HTML, you might see HTML. If it supports AMP, you'll see the AMP version. So the fallbacks work that way. Also, there's certain things that there are time limits. There's a 30-day time limit. After 30 days, the email expires, and you'll no longer see the AMP version. You'll go to an HTML version. It's not often people look at an email after 30 days, so that's not too much of an issue. But also it's good from a maintenance point of view, particularly when you're doing like live content. You don't need to keep updating that for more than 30 days after you're sent. You can then forget about it, which is good. So yeah, it's sort of that's one of the main things. Also setting it up. How do you start sending AMP emails? And you can register through. You need to register through AMP. So there's a form to fill out, and then you send a test email to each of the mail providers for them to approve, and then you'll get added onto the allow lists, and then you can start sending AMP from there. So that's and before that, if you want to start, you can start going to the AMP playground and start building some templates and just getting an idea, getting a feel for it, and to understand the code, and just to see if there's how you like working with it. And I love working with it. It's so nice. It's you don't have all those issues that you have with HTML email, where actually all the mixed support across email clients. it works really nicely, and there's built-in validation in these playgrounds. So if you try and do anything that's not supported, it'll flag it up straight away before you send it, and find out later it's actually much quicker and easier to use.
Yeah, and I mean, so you shared a couple of links with us yesterday around the playgrounds and all. We'll just be taking a minute to share this in the chat section here. Folks who are tuned in, Mansi from my team would be sharing this in a while. These are links that you can go and access around all things AMP, how to get started with them. These are demo environments that are superb. You can actually play around with the code and see for yourself how some of these elements look inside emails. So we'll be sharing this in a bit soon. Thanks for those links, Mark. They were truly helpful. Again, this all is great. I want to understand from you, what are some of the most edgiest and the coolest things you've seen customers doing with AMP emails? The ones that stand out and possibly push the envelope. What are some of those things that you've seen?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of really cool stuff going on. One which it's not pushing the envelope so much, but it's just really useful and it's one that I think a lot of people might have seen already, is the Google Docs integration. If you comment on a Google Doc, it comes through and you see that, and then you can reply to it directly from within the email. That, I think, is so useful, and I use it all the time. And one of the things that I think AMP really does promote, and we need to think about a lot more, is user experience and doing things for the user. One thing that constantly annoys me is when you get a message from social media sort of sites, you'll say, you have got a new direct message, and it might say from whoever, it'll tell you who it's from, but you don't see that message. So you then have to click through, log in, go to your messages, open that message and see the message. Yeah. And usually that message is a response to something I've just sent over, and it's just saying, thanks. It's a waste of my time. It's frustrating. But using things like AMP, you can see that message. With the way that Google Docs has it integrated, you can see that message, you can respond to it if needs be, or you can just say, okay, that's all done, and I don't need that. So that's I think really good. Also from Google, there's some great stuff. I just saw in the chat, Jeff mentioned the Google Nest emails. I've got an example. I don't know if I can share my screen, but I've got an example of one of them here.
Sure, you
can. See if that works. But
Mansi, can we have Mark sharing his screen, please?
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is one of the Google Store emails that they sent, and this is opened in the AMP playgrounds, so you can see the code, you can play with the code, and but this is a really nice one. They've done a few like this along the lines of this. So this is the Pixel Buds. This is one of the first ones they did. So here we can make a selection. Let's get some white ones, add to cart, and then you've got quantity. So let's put 2 of those. Let's get some green ones as well. So we'll put 2 of the green ones, and you can see it sort of adding up the prices as we're doing this. Let's put some black ones in as well, and just the price goes up and adjusts as we change the quantities, as we adjust all the settings. And then we can click checkout, and it'll go through to the page where you can check out. It's a really nice, simple integration. It's done well, and yeah, nice, nice and responsive. It works on all different screen sizes. It's just, yeah, it's very intuitive as well. You see these thumbnails, you want to click on them. So similar to what I said about familiar design patterns around galleries. This is what we've got here. You see this, and it's intuitive to interact with that. I think it's good to call these things out as well, and just sort of like they've done here, explore your options below, and so just call it out, let people know it's interactive, let people know how to interact. But really, a lot of that is just done by using these sort of design conventions that we see across all kinds of digital technology of a large image and 4 little thumbnails below it will change that image. And you understand that. The add to cart button, the quantity drop down, these are, they're just using a regular select menu here. They're not doing anything too fancy. You could have a little plus minus if you wanted that for quantity, and all that sort of stuff works. But it's a very intuitive design, and I think that's a great one.
Yeah, this is truly amazing. So Jeff has an associate aligned question. If they are so amazing, all right, why do they just send this once in 6 months?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've seen they've sent a few of these. I would imagine, I don't know, but I would imagine they are testing it. And so you start off, you send a couple of things before you actually build a system, because you can build a system to generate emails, and email build systems are great. And they could have something that would create this, and you just select what products are going in it, and it creates the email and you send it out. But I think before investing the time in doing that, they're probably hand building these. So it takes a bit more time to do it. But as I say, I don't work for Google, so I don't know, but I'd assume it might be something like that, just sort of testing out and seeing what the results are like compared to just doing the HTML version to see what they'll do. I was just thinking, actually, there's another, as far as sort of pushing the boundaries, I had a go at sort of trying to do something a bit different. And this is one of the, so this is the AMP demos site that I think is shared in the comments there. This is something I put together with my colleague Stephen at Salesforce. So it's a number of demos that we've put together of just sort of trying things out. And I wanted to try and see, how can we push things? How can we just rethink email? And occasionally you get like websites, like concept websites, and it's like, oh, this is done completely differently to other websites, and you interact with it differently. So I had a go at doing something, and I created this book layout. So if I just click on here, we'll open it up in the playground.
Yeah,
you can see here. So I've got this this catalog, and you can just click next page, and just flick through these pages. Wow. And just change it like that. Also, there's a slider at the top, so you can just sort of flick through nice and quickly with that. And we've got a little number inputs, so I can just type in a number and go straight to that page. So I just like trying to think differently around it. And this one, actually, this is mostly CSS going on here. I'm using, you can see in the scripts at the top here, I'm using AMP bind. Yeah. But actually, all the 3D page flipping stuff, that's CSS. And because AMP gives us this extra CSS support that we don't have in that many email clients, we could do something similar to this with Apple Mail, because they have very good CSS support, but yeah, most don't. So actually, the 3D CSS stuff is all coming from just regular CSS, but it's the AMP is allowing us to do that. But what I'm using the AMP for is just changing the page number, and the transition is CSS. So that's it's kind of a fun one. And the code is up on that website. So if everyone wants to actually use this in a campaign, steal my code, put your own content in, and send it out. It's I'd love to see stuff like this going out in the wild.
Yeah, and that URL, folks who are listening to this, the URL that's there is a part of the Heroku app demo environment. So you could just check it out there, and from there you could go hit the code that Mark just showed us. Also in the chat panel, you'll see there's this emailmonday.com, this link here written by our good friend Jordi. It's a massive brain dump of everything that you can do. These are great thought exercises, and these are not just thought exercises. Sorry, you can actually realize them for real. And if you need to get any more inspiration on what is possible in the whole world of AMP, this is your link. And Jordi, I'm trying to reach you for about 2 weeks now. Please respond to my ping if you are here in the audience. All right. Moving on to the next part. So e-commerce, of course, that's typical. And it's very easy to understand why e-commerce would be big on AMP. Are there any other industries that you think you are working with that are big on AMP? Are you seeing any latent emerging use cases elsewhere?
Yeah, there's a few things. I mean, it does work across industries. There's so many little things that can work, and it's what I like to think about is what are you trying to do with an email?
Yeah.
A lot of people say emails you're trying to get somebody to click through to the website. That makes no sense to me. You're trying to get somebody to do something that might involve clicking through onto the website, yes, but it might not. So some things can be done directly in the email. Sometimes you can enhance the experience in the email so they're more likely to click through. Sometimes you qualify the links more. So we've seen things where you're giving them more information in the email. So when they click through, the conversion rate once they land on the website is much higher, but maybe a few less people click through, but they're more qualified. So they know, so it's a better user experience. And I think that's the key thing, is just think, what is it I'm trying to do with this email? What is it that the user wants? How can I help the user do this? Because what do I want as a business, and what does the user want, and how can we marry those things up in the best possible way, in the best possible experience? And some of the time, that is you can enhance that with AMP or interactivity, just to make that a cleaner, smoother experience. I think reviews is a big one.
Sure.
We've see a lot of stuff. I think actually I've got one of the on the websites. The survey responses improved by 257% by letting customers fill surveys inside the email.
That's actually
huge.
us.
Was that you?
Yeah. That's
brilliant.
our customer. Yeah. So I mean, if you scroll down, you'll see. I mean, there's a mention of us there. Yeah. That's our use case.
Well,
yeah.
There we go. That's there we go. 𝐿𝐿𝐿. Unintentional promotion for you there. I mean, this stuff's great. It's one of the things that I think about and we've seen this with the HTML interactivity with the forms and doing reviews that way, and surveys and feedback and all that sort of stuff. It's the transparency, I think, is the key, and it's changing the question. So instead of saying, would you like to leave us feedback? Would you like to fill in a survey? Would you like to give us a review? You just say, what did you think? And it's changing that question. And then, so it's a simpler question, and it's transparent as well. You can see what there is. When you've got a link through to fill in a form on a website, you don't know how big that form is. Are you just going to say, give me a star rating, title for the review, and a description of your review? That's like 3 fields, quite simple one. You can do that. But sometimes it's actually, what did you think? How did you rate this part? How did you rate this part? And it can end up being quite long and frustrating. So being able to sort of see that as a user, being able to see that in the inbox and go, okay, it's just boof, 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 send it away, and we're good. I think that's a great use case. And as you can see, but by using Mailmodo, you can get some great results.
Yes. And just to add on to this very timely plug, there are 2 more plugs we are going to put in. You spoke about e-commerce. There are 2 specific industries we've seen a lot of traction happening in. So a lot of crypto startups are using us. One crypto startup, again, a Y Combinator funded startup called Mudrex. These guys run automated bots for you who will sort of run your trades on your behalf. They use Mailmodo to educate. I mean, they use Mailmodo to send out these webinar email campaigns. And for them, webinars are a key part to educate investors so that they understand what the risks are in cryptocurrencies. And they moved to Mailmodo, and their webinar signups jumped out by about 280%. That's a case study we'll be plugging in here. Another story we have is from an Edtech customer. It's called Hopspace. It's again vocational programs for kids to learn things like chess, badminton, things like that. They use AMP emails to generate demos, and they get 20 demos out of 100 every 100 emails sent. So that's the sort of conversion rates our customers are seeing. Both of these would be plugged in here. This is great. Here's something that people ask us a lot of times. Mark, you were saying this yesterday when we were on a dry run. What's the difference between AMP versus interactive HTML? All right. And people still want to understand where does the interactive HTML's boundary end and where does AMP start and what's the convergence and everything in between.
So yeah, so interactive HTML email, where I sort of started off with interactivity, it's powered by checkboxes and radio buttons, so like form inputs. You can have a checkbox or a radio button. You click on a checkbox and it's checked, or you click it again, it's unchecked. So we can detect this checked status using CSS, and then we can style things in the email based off that. So you can have a checkbox and you click it and then it's checked. So say, if this is checked, then here's some content, we'll expand it and we'll show this content for an accordion section. And you click it again and it will close it up. So that's really good and it works. But it's a hack. This is not what this is intended for. It's not what checkboxes are intended for, or radio buttons. So we're not using things for intended purpose. It's hard to get it working well. It's very hard to get it accessible. It is possible to get it accessible, but there are, there's some limitations with it, and it's very hard to get that working. Because email clients change a lot, it's hard to maintain. But it is still very cool. With AMP, it's built for this. It's made to be done this way. It's made for this, and we can do a lot more.
Sure.
So if you're looking at the interactivity, when you click on something in an interactive email, that click triggers something, and it triggers sort of one thing. That one thing could involve multiple parts, but multiple moving pieces, but it's triggering one thing. In AMP, you can trigger multiple things. In AMP, you can do more with calculations as well. You can adjust things more. You can do a lot more. You can make it more accessible. It's a lot easier to make things accessible. There's a lot of out the box sort of components in AMP, so you can use like the AMP carousel to build a carousel, the AMP accordion to build an accordion. These are like it's all the work's done there for you, and they're really, really easy to use. In the Trailhead Live videos that we have at Salesforce, the first video sort of goes into a bit of that and how easy it is to use it. Then you can do some more advanced things using AMP bind, and then you start building your custom stuff, which, like I did with the little flipbook catalog. Then you can do some more that way. But when you're doing that, you need to then it gets a bit harder on the AMP side as well, because you need to start thinking about accessibility and managing the states, which is possible. It's very doable, and it's still easier than doing it in interactive HTML. So there's a lot that you can do with it, and then there's the live content.
Yeah.
There are some you can do to a certain extent live content in HTML email using images, and you just sort of keep updating that image. So when the request comes through, you send a fresh image every time, depending on various factors. The new iOS or Apple mail protection policy stuff has messed with that a bit, because then they're caching the images, so that doesn't really work so well there anymore. But also it's just an image. You're very limited. You can't really put much content in there. You can just change a picture. You can't change the alt text. You can't change like important information. But with AMP, you can use an AMP list, and you pull in live data, and this is pulled in as a JSON file of live data, and then you laid out in the content of the email. You can do that on open, or you can do that on form submit. So you can fill in a bit of form and get something. You can do a search in AMP, and you get some search results back in the email straight away. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, that's fantastic. We have a lot of pings coming in here. Nikolai asks us, is AMP suitable for all ESPs at the moment? Would you like to take a shot here?
Yeah, so it's not all ESPs support it yet. Salesforce does, which we launched about a year ago. If your ESP doesn't support AMP, let them know. Sort of one of the things I've seen, like from which is just really driven home to me since working for Salesforce and also being part of the AMP working group is, people ask for things. If people don't ask for things, then we don't know that they're needed. So the more requests that come through, the more likely things are to happen. And it seems obvious, but it really, really does make a difference. So if you want something, if you want support from your ESP, if they don't have it, ask them for it, and they'll look into it. If they're getting a lot of requests, then they'll build it, and they'll make it happen. So
Yes.
it's
One
not
and
everywhere yet, but
also Mailmodo also supports AMP.
of course.
Yes, yes. Dimitri Dimitri and Jitendra are talking here in the things here about dislikes. Lack of analytics, no support from vendors like MailChimp, time-consuming tech skill required to implement. Sorry, shameless plugin here, Dimitri. If you use Mailmodo, you don't need a coder. It's a no-code platform. You can get started with AMP emails without any tech intervention required. It's not time-consuming. You can get started with your first template and build it in under 10 minutes. So that should sort of quell a little bit of your doubts around it. Also, a lot of analytics and tracking. Just check out mailmodo.com. In the comments, there's a link there. You can check it out. I guess you'll love it.
I think from the lack of analytics and tracking, I've not seen that. I think you can do the same tracking that you can do in HTML email.
Absolutely.
And so it's I'm not sure there's any issues there. But getting more email client support would be good. And I think that's one of the things that's happening. Like the more people use it, and we're seeing more people using it, we're seeing it. There is growth. A lot of people are waiting. A lot of people are waiting and playing the wait and see game. If you, like the more people sending, then the more likely more email clients are going to support it, and then more email clients support it, more bigger brands are sending it, then everybody, it's building. It's definitely on the up, but it's ramping up slowly, and then I think it's going to take off at some point.
Slowly and then exponentially. Kevin is asking, do you need to take an approval from Google for every AMP email that you send out? No, Kevin, not for every. It's just a one-time approval, and that's about it. Once you get that approval from Google once, you can send out an AMP email anytime you want to. Is that right? Is my understanding correct?
Yes, but don't abuse it, because that can be removed at any time as well. So it's sort of if you, the same with like your sender reputation when you're sending HTML email. If you start abusing it, then you start listed as spam. If you start abusing AMP and sending things that for whatever reason aren't appropriate, then you can lose that supported status. And it's the same. So it's with Gmail, Yahoo, AOL, and Mail.ru. You need to. There's one form you fill in to register to send, but you then need to contact as well each of those email clients individually to get approved by them. But once your address is approved, then you send away and you're good to go.
Yep, absolutely. That's the right explanation, Kevin. Just two more things before we wrap this up. We have about 6 more minutes left. There are a lot of these myths that float around, Mark, around the security aspects. All right, folks asking us, okay, can we run password recovery use cases, and how secure would it be? Is it prone to phishing, things like that? So would you break this myth right now for our audiences around its security questions?
Well, I can't. I'm not a security expert. I can't talk too much on security. So don't. So, but from my point of view, it's I wouldn't be doing passwords in there, but I don't know. It might be. You can check up on that more. But generally speaking, when you're sending an email, it's touching a lot of points when you send an email. So you're creating it using a tool, and then it's going into an ESP. These could be overlaps there, or it could be a separate tool to your ESP. Then it's going into your ESP. Then it's sending out via a mail server. That's being received via a mail server. That's going into an email client. And there's could be, it could be two parties there. It could be multiple parties involved in that sending chain. So there's always these concerns around, like now AMP have access to my content. Like the email clients have a lot more access to a lot more content than AMP does. And if you try, AMP is, they don't really have access. It's scripts that are hosted there, and that it's built into the email client, and then they're requesting these scripts which are going to build the interactions. So it's AMP doesn't really have any control there. But I'd say don't start putting things in emails, in AMP emails that you wouldn't put in HTML emails, and vice versa. I think if you're very concerned about security, then you can talk to people who know more about it. There's a few good places to talk to about AMP. If you have any questions, there's a Stack Overflow, and also there's a Slack channel for AMP. So yeah, definitely look into there if you've got any questions or thoughts around AMP. If you've got any bugs or feature requests, then go through the GitHub, and you can put issues on the GitHub about any feature requests or bugs that you're seeing, and we can have a look at them from there.
Absolutely. And about the future, where do you see this heading towards? There are some naysayers in the chat here, Mark. Do you think AMP email will be supported actively in the future, or will it become one of the many Google's initiatives that reach the graveyard? What's the future here then?
There's no signs that it's going down. I mean, it might do, but I'm feeling confident for the time being. We're seeing more and more adoption. We're seeing more sends.
Absolutely.
I think people were a bit sort of concerned because you're not seeing loads of AMP emails in your inbox. It's still new. There's still a lot of ESPs that aren't sending it. There's still it's building. It will grow. It is growing. It's just it's getting there. But I think it's going to continue to develop. And I think it's one of those things. The more people use it, the more we'll see it, the more it will grow. And so just start playing around with it. And I think I think there's some good future for it.
Yeah. And Kevin, just to answer you from a numbers, I mean, if I would provide a numbers perspective here, we at Mailmodo sort of specialize in this. We are adding tons and tons of customers every month. We are doubling our revenue quarter on quarter. So there's enough evidence that folks are getting a lot of value out of AMP emails. There are tons of case studies that we've already mentioned in the chat box here. I think our customers are getting a lot of value because folks are interacting with those emails. So I don't see that happening anytime soon. Ivan is asking, what do you think the technology community can do to get at least 1 in 3 marketeers to create 1 AMP email per month?
Tools is one of the main things. Tools for building these emails. I'm a developer. I love getting it deep in the code, and I really enjoy that. And for me, this is great because there's loads of stuff you can do. So when I first heard about it, I got really excited. I started building things, and so that's great. But not everybody is a developer. Not everybody has access to developers who can build stuff for them. So tools is the main thing, and obviously Mailmodo, you can build using that. But there's a number of other tools around, and again, this is something that's going to help with. There's more tools being released all the time. More, everything's just developing. It's because when it launched, there wasn't much in place. I think there was probably a bit of a mistake with the way it was launched. I think there should have been some tie-ins with ESPs and sort of some more tools built for it, so actually people could start using it straight away. It was that's why it was a big launch and then a big dip, because there wasn't the knowledge there of how to do it. There wasn't the tools there to help you build things and to send emails. But those are coming now, and they're building. And as those are building up, we're going to see more and more. And one of the biggest things that happens is the CEO of a company will see an email and go, oh, that's really cool. Why aren't we doing this? Let's do this. And it's annoying that it doesn't come from the people. It comes from the top. It doesn't come from the people who know. People, I see a lot of people trying to get their companies doing this, but it's not until, like, the CEO has this great idea, which is all their own idea, that then actually it gets done. But that's something that happens with a lot of things. Or when your competitors start doing it, it's the other one. Your competitors doing this, and it's like,
that happens so many times.
It's why aren't we doing this? It's like, well, I suggested it a couple of years ago,
but I was probably checking out what was happening 2 years ago. Game of Thrones. Nikolai is asking, how do you recommend to start using AMP for emails? What to be aware of in the baby steps?
So the first thing, most important thing, get registered. Get registered with AMP, with Gmail, with Yahoo, AOL, mail.ru. It's not a complicated process, but it can take a little bit of time for them to get back to you and get registered. So just get that done now, and then once then you'll get the approval by the time you're ready to send. It doesn't take long, maybe a couple of weeks, but that's the first thing to do. Then start looking at the spec. Look at the resources. I've shared that website that I've got with all the demos on. Have a look at the code. We've got a series of Trailhead Live videos of how to code AMP. If you want to get in from the code point of view of how to build AMP emails, that's something that's there's the basics of it. If you're used to coding HTML, the basics of it are really easy to pick up. But then it's sort of the advanced stuff. It can get very complicated, but that's the same with everything. But the basics are really easy. You're just writing HTML mostly. Like the vast majority of the code you're writing is HTML and CSS. Then you're putting a little bit of AMP in there, a few little sprinkles to make it work. I think check out those Trailhead Live learning resources, and there's a few things like the AMP carousel, AMP accordion. They're kind of plug and play components. So you just put that code in and it works. Going on to do the stuff with AMP bind, with AMP list, AMP forms, those are a bit more complicated. So maybe come into those later, but they're more complicated, but also that's where a lot of the real deep value is. But that can come later. You don't need to jump in at the deep end. You can just work your way up. And just start playing with it, and go onto the playgrounds, and you can start writing the code now, and it validates as you write it. So as you're typing your code, it will pop up with little errors of where things aren't valid, so you can fix those as you go, which is really good. So definitely, looking at those will be a great place to start.
Or just talk to us and we'll tell you how to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mark. This was such good fun to host you. Too many good questions as well. I loved the engagement that we had today. Any closing thoughts for the audience here who've been very, very kind with their time here?
Just like get into it. If you've got any further questions, find me on Twitter, m_j_robbins, or on the Email Geek Slack, or on the AMP Slack if you want to, follow up with anything, more questions. I'm happy to help out. Also, if you've got any feature requests for AMP, get them onto the GitHub, and start asking for things. If you don't ask, you don't get. Ask your ESPs. Ask for if you're using any build tools, ask them how to add AMP support. If you're using an agency for sending emails, ask them about it. It's just start asking the questions, and yeah, I think we can do quite a lot of cool stuff with it.
Yes, we absolutely can. That's about it. Thank you so much. There are some more questions. We have taken a note of them. Mark and I would be answering them jointly after this call over emails. Stuart, we'll be answering your question shortly. Thank you so much, Mark. Thanks for your time. Yeah, that's about it for now.
Thank you.